Welcome back to another episode of the Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call podcast. My name is Melissa Deely, your host, and I am super excited to have with us today Michal Spiegelman. Welcome to the show, Michal.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I'm a fan and I'm so looking forward to this conversation.
I am too, because there's so much alignment in our work. But first, let me introduce you to the audience. Michal is the visionary behind Beacons of Change, a transformative platform dedicated to guiding women and healing professionals toward a soul-fueled life lived at full power. As the founder and creator of the Soulful Healer method for profound transformation, Michal empowers a diverse community of individuals to find their authentic voice and develop a distinctive identity. And I truly love that, Michal, because there's nothing more profound than helping someone to live their life fully and authentically. And in fact, on a call I was on earlier today, we were just talking about some favorite quotes, and I'm absolutely going to butcher this one, but one of them was talking about living life, and when it comes time to the end of your life, that you want to slide right into your grave, just like boom, crash into it, going, yes, I've lived my life fully. So I love this work that you're doing, and I would love for you to share your story as to how you came to this work that you do today.
Yeah, so just building on what you said about this quote. So the tagline on my Beacons of Change website is guiding people toward a soul-fueled life lived at full power. And what you said about living authentically, I know that's where you and I aligned, like really empower people to live authentically. Then for me, it's really living like a soul-fueled life that leads there. And my story, like many stories, I lived a life that, looking back, was not a soul-fueled life. I disconnected from my soul because of trauma. Um, in my background, I'm a social worker. Before I became a spiritual mentor and a medical intuitive, I was a social worker. And the clinical education that I got in school felt very quickly limiting to me, like it didn't see the person as a whole. And then I had a series of personal trauma and wake up calls myself that because I took an holistic, I broadened my approach. I was able to turn those wake up calls into opportunities, really, and then it turned into my method. Just like you with your story, how you're able to turn your wake up call into an opportunity and healing. So just to share two wake up calls quickly. One was I was pregnant 8 times. I have two wonderful young adult children, but 6 of those 8 pregnancies ended in the 6 or 7 months. And I went to early labor. I was bed resting for 10 years. So conceiving and bringing children was yeah, it was hard for me. But then um, during my last pregnancy, after I already have my two children and already carried so much trauma from losing all the babies,
Mm-hmm.
then something went wrong in the procedure when they had to stop the pregnancy, and I almost died in that procedure, and it was very traumatic for me. And
Yes.
and then it was really like a wake up call to I didn't want to stop. I wanted to have more than two children, so I wanted to just like keep going, keep going, keep going. And then this wake up call invited me to step back and evaluate. Um, and then I started to take care of my depression because I got very depressed from losing the
Mm,
babies.
I'm sure.
And therapy, honestly, traditional therapy didn't help me with that because the first therapist that I used back then was not trauma informed, and she did not have a holistic approach
Mm-hmm.
to to the person. So that taught me, I mean, that therapist was one of my greatest teachers because I was a young social worker, and I was like, I need to find other holistic ways to offer healing, transformation for myself and for others.
Mm.
And then that's what took me on a journey that later became my Soulful Healer method, which I'm presenting in a book that is going to be released in the summer of 2024. And it's very, it just feels like a privilege to me, and such a blessing to be able to take one of the wake-up calls that I just shared now. I had another one, but at least this wake-up call, and then build on my personal depression and trauma that was not addressed correctly, and then develop the Soulful Healer method that helps so many people to heal deeply from within. And I think that's really what led me to become a medical intuitive and to develop my unique, authentic way to help people get to the core of their illness, and write a roadmap for their healing.
And I love how you look at that. And I love where you've come from and where you're at now, in that you're able to look back with the advantage of perfect 2020 hindsight and look at it with gratitude and know that this experience was happening for you so that you could get the learning that you needed to learn in order to be able to heal yourself, which has now set you up to be able to help others. And that, to me, and in the work that I do, is what's so key, is to get to the root and to get to the learning. Because when we have the learning, that's what allows the body to release the trauma, all of the built up emotions, etc. And so,
Right. And one of the learning, I mean, there are so many learnings, but one of the learning was that I even when I was in a better place and I was able to um, I don't know if heal my depression, but at least address my depression, there was still something in me, like a sense of emptiness, or just a sense of like not feeling fulfilled, that was part of my being. And that led me to research and to understand the importance of having a connection with your soul. And what I discovered is that lacking a connection with the soul is at the core of many conditions. So even when we do the trauma healing, and even when we heal physically, people, and I have so many clients that they come to me and they say, everything should be perfect in my life. I was able to heal my illness, I have a good marriage and everything, but something inside feels empty. And that's really the connection to the soul. And I think one of my biggest personal learning that then became my method, my brand, everything, was the understanding how the connection with the soul is undervalued. People don't recognize how important it is.
absolutely, I agree fully with that. And again, in the work that I do, it's so aligned with your work. I talk about the four bodies: the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body, or the soul body, as you're referring to it. And that misalignment in the soul body is what I call the toxicity of the soul. And I call myself the friendly toxin slayer and help people detox the physical body, the emotional body, the stuffed down emotions, the mental body, the limiting beliefs, the I can't, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, etc. And then that misalignment in the soul or the spiritual body as to what we're truly supposed to be doing in this life, this time. And so when we can connect people with that, that's where they can find their fulfillment.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you also refer to the spiritual body, because I think another learning that came out of my wake up calls was understanding the value of spirituality and having a spiritual connection. And I teach spirituality for many years, and I always talk about spirituality in a non-religious, religious way. Spirituality can strengthen any religion, but it doesn't have to. So I teach spiritual practices that are not related to religion, but I think that I was lacking that as well, growing up in a house that didn't value a connection with something bigger than us. And actually, I remember thinking about this concept when I listened to one of your episodes when you were talking about personal power and being at a cause and not the effect. And I loved, I don't remember exactly what you said, but I loved your approach to personal power. I think you even said like we can achieve that. We can achieve a connection with a personal power. And my own perspective is that the formula for living a healthy life and showing up authentically in the world is tapping into personal power and spiritual power combined. Because personal power, like when I take people through a process of connecting with their personal power, I have a specific process of aligning with the values. And when I work with professionals, it will be like personal values and professional values. And when I work with individuals who are not professionals, it will be just individual personal values, but aligning with values and aligning with attributes of who you really are so you can live empowered. But if we only rely on our personal power, it can become really heavy. It's a lot of pressure and responsibility. And again, it's something I learned the hard way when I was lacking a connection and just like really taking responsibility to everything on my shoulders, like wanting to change the world as a social worker and just like absorbing all the pain and suffering. And once I built a connection with a power greater than myself, with source energy, it doesn't matter how you call it. You can call it source energy, universal energy, God. It doesn't matter the name, but really a power that's greater than us. Then I think that this partnership with existence, or with something that is bigger than us, combine with taking the responsibility and standing in our power, in our personal power, that leads to, again, living healthy, well-being, and authenticity.
I love all that you've shared there. And I was just listening and finding it interesting that, as a social worker wanting to change the world or save the world and taking all that responsibility on yourself, you hadn't built that spiritual connection. And for me, when I look back, I reconnected with my spiritual connection when I got let go from the corporate world. Because in the corporate world, I feel like it's kind of beaten out of you, right? And I heard somebody say in recent years that the entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual journey. And that is certainly my experience as I've come back into exploring my spiritual self, which when I look back, it happened almost right away when I got let go. Because when I got let go, I was 24 years of service and I was given an hour to clear out my desk, no word of thanks. And in that moment, I knew I wouldn't work for someone else again. And I had no idea what I was going to do. However, in that moment, I was open to being guided. So it was kind of like, boom, that connection and being open came right back.
And you didn't experience this connection before, like when
Not,
you were a child or growing
yes,
up?
as a child. So as a teenager, I lost my father. And as I looked back, I realized that he was always with me. And I knew that even then, that I carried him with me. I never really thought of it as a spiritual connection. I didn't really know what it was, except he was there. And so as I looked back, I realized that I'd had it, that I'd experienced it. But during all those 24 years in the corporate world, I'd ignored it, pushed it away. That was kind of the expectation. Then all of a sudden, boom, it was back, giving me the opportunity to step back into that now. So I love that we're having this discussion. And I want to come back to your wake up call number 2 if you're willing to share that. However, before we go there, I would just love for you to share your thoughts on that, integrating soul care into your daily life for long-term health, because it it is so important to our long-term health.
Right, exactly. And as I said before, many people don't see the value of reconnecting with their souls, and many people don't really understand that when they have this sense of um, emptiness, something is missing. My life supposed to be perfect, but I'm not as happy as I can be. That really comes from a disconnection from the soul, and we all know. The importance of self-care, but we don't really know to maybe differentiate between self-care and soul care. And in my book, and I wanted just to read the definition from my book, I have it here on my wall. So in my book, when I talk about self-care and soul care, I say self-care keeps us well functioning, while soul care makes our lives deeply meaningful.
Beautiful.
And there can be practices that they fall under both
Hmm.
categories that
Hmm.
also fill up our soul. But when we only focus on self-care and we don't, and we're not intentional about listening to our soul, connecting with our soul, asking our soul what she needs, give her what she needs. The way that I look at the soul is that the soul is the pure essence of who we are. And
Hmm.
all the soul's purpose when the soul comes to our physical body is learning and growing and expanding. Our soul really wants us to experience life to the fullest and to experience all kind of emotions. So there are no negative emotions. We are meant to feel all emotions, whatever they are. So our soul will have different needs in different times. For example, when something, let's say there is something traumatic going on and we have a health crisis, then our soul wouldn't want us to push away the discomfort or to push away even the sadness or the anger. Our soul would like us to experience that, which means that
Mm.
we want to make space for those feelings and emotions, not to let them take over,
Right.
but to let them be part. So soulfulness and soul care are really important for our health. We know that, like in your podcast, you talk a lot about such really important topics like sleeping well and food choices and the detox, and all the physical care really that
Hmm.
is essential. In addition to it, if we could really look within our soul and ask, what do we need from us today? What wisdom do you have to share with us? And when I take when I take women through the journey into their souls and they ask their soul questions, many times the clarity, the guidance they receive is very simple,
Hmm.
like just be with me and give me a hug, or let's just sit together with no distractions. Very simple, but it's really the connection with this essence of who we are, the pure essence of who we are, that is important to nurture and to feed in our daily life.
That's beautiful. I love how you explain that. And, sometimes what we truly need are really the simplest things. And life has taught us to be in this do, do, do mode and always busy. And we don't value the importance of slowing down and going within.
Yeah, yeah.
And I talk about the unconscious mind a lot and the
Mm-hmm.
higher self. And the higher self has the perfect blueprint of our perfect health. And the conscious mind cannot connect directly to the higher self. We have to go through the unconscious self, the unconscious mind. And I would love you to share your thoughts on that, because I know we talked before we started recording, and you were talking about the unconscious mind and the soul and the doorway between.
Right. So I think it's interesting because honestly, I'm not saying in any way that my approach, about becoming soulful is better than any other approach. I think that
Mm,
each one of us shines the light on a different angle, and together we really align with our,
absolutely.
with our goals, with our purpose, with our mission. I
Yes.
think so. I love hearing you talk about the unconscious mind. In my book, there is a chapter 4, that is dedicated to insight as a key for profound transformation. What I share in this chapter is that the insight should not come just from the mind, from the intellect, but the insight should come from within, like you said, and from inner wisdom, and from what I like to call the collective wisdom. The collective wisdom is the same concept that the psychiatrist Jung called it the unconscious, the collective unconscious. The same thing. I tweaked it a little bit and I call it the collective wisdom. So we have the inner wisdom that is within us, and we also have the collective wisdom that is wisdom shared between groups of people. That can be like feminine wisdom, that can be different wisdom, ancient wisdom. I believe that there is ancient feminine wisdom that all women can enjoy connecting with, and we can um, connect with our soul. Through the connection with our soul, we can tap into this wisdom that is an ocean, or
Hmm.
really a pool of wisdom that can inspire us, that can bring that insight. So when I have clients that, let's say, they experience a medical crisis, or maybe they have an illness that even does not have solutions in the Western medicine, it happens like symptoms, then I take them through a journey connecting with their soul, and then they receive, or we receive it together. We team up, me as a medical intuitive and the person that is engaged in the role of their personal healing. We team up to receive clarity from the soul on the learning experience and what they can change. And and going back to your question, I think that the unconscious mind and the soul, there is an interesting interplay between them. I don't know which one is the door to the other one. It's like connecting to the soul is the door to go deeper to a conscious level, or connecting with the unconscious is the door to connect with the soul. But definitely there is an interplay there, that when we go deeper than the conscious information and the conscious um, knowledge that we have, that's where the true clarity comes from.
Yeah, I love that. And in my learnings, and part of my studying has been in the realm of quantum physics. And it's actually showing that the conscious mind connects to the unconscious mind, which connects to the higher self, which is
Mhm.
another way of saying the soul. And so the unconscious mind is that doorway to be able to go and capture the blueprint of perfect health,
Mhm.
so we can get the
Mhm.
wisdom from our soul
Right.
as to what it is that we need in order for us to be able to heal or live our
Right.
best life.
Yeah, and just maybe to give a practical example to make
Mhm.
it maybe simpler, just from a recent conversation I had with one of my clients. She reached out to me years ago when her cancer came back for the second time, and then the process that I took her to connect to her soul and to receive the guidance from within shined the light on some trauma that she carried from an early age when her dad actually had cancer. And when, through this connection with the soul, she was able to create a roadmap for her own healing, she
Mm.
realized that the spiritual gift that her dad left her is the understanding that she needs to take an engaged role in this healing journey, because her dad was just like trusting the doctors and just say, do whatever you think you need to do. And he did not do any personal process of understanding things and researching. And she said, I learned from his experience that I want to receive medical help, but I need to be the one who's navigating this process and building on what her soul, the memories that her soul brought her from where her dad was very ill and she felt very hopeless that she couldn't help him, really gave her the roadmap to consciously choose how she wants to navigate this process of recovering from cancer. And now, years later, she is clean and she's cancer free, and it gave her really a sense of she accepted the responsibility to navigate her life in the way she wants to, and not only to trust medical professionals that they know what's best for her. And it's really amazing to witness that. And I'm sure that you and I could work with the same woman, and you will help her to open a door to her unconscious mind. The way I do it is taking her to the journey into her soul and receiving messages from within. The results may be the same. I think the language is different.
Yes, it's just slightly different. And the message there too is there are more than one way to heal, right?
Oh
And
my
so
God,
for each
yes.
person on their healing journey, I love what you're saying is we must advocate for ourselves, and we must tune in to what it is that we need on our healing journey and find the right person to be able to guide us in that healing journey. And I love what you share, your client's experience. It's very similar to an experience I just went through, which I talked about in episode 171 on this show. It's exactly that, is taking responsibility for my health journey and navigating it the way that's right for me. And that doesn't mean that the way I navigated mine would be right for you or for anybody else.
Absolutely.
Finding the right way for our individual self. And the only way we can do that is by going inside and listening to that inner wisdom, that inner guidance that comes from the soul or the higher self, whatever language
Mm-hmm.
we're using.
Right, right. And you know what you said now, and this moment of realization, that we need to accept responsibility and be the cause and not the effect. The second wake up call that I had maybe three, but the second wake up call that I had years later after the pregnancy was when my mother died when she was 65, and she lived a very unhealthy lifestyle. I think everything you present in your podcast, she would be an example of like, no, didn't do it. No, not eating healthy and not taking care of herself in any way. She was on like 20 different medications before she passed away, and she passed away at an early age,
Yes.
65.
Yes.
And it was troubling to me. I was already a social worker and a healer and a Reiki master. It was troubling to me to see how she's going down this path without choosing really not to change it. And there was a moment in her funeral when I knew that if I don't make some changes in my lifestyle, I will end up the same way as her. I was 90 pounds more than I am now when I was in her funeral, and I was unhealthy in different ways. And there was a moment, just like happened to you when you left the corporate, there was a moment in her funeral when I realized that I need to take self-care to the next level, and really change my lifestyle, my food choices, my sleep, my exercise, everything. And just like the spiritual gifts that I got from the babies I lost when I was younger, I got a spiritual gift from my mother, who showed me how not to live, and just made it so clear to me how it's time to accept responsibility to my life, connect to my soul, receive guidance, and then be on a path for healing, which I did.
And I love that too, because it comes back to, again, the science of epigenetics, that for so long we've been taught that it's our genes that matter. And if your mother had breast cancer, you'll get breast cancer. If your father has
Mm-hmm.
heart disease, you're going to have heart disease. And so, we were raised in this belief that we don't have any control over our health outcomes. So just do whatever,
Yes,
doesn't matter. And we now know, thanks to the science of epigenetics, that that isn't true. We have so much control over our health outcomes, and it all comes down to the lifestyle choices we made and make. And you're a beautiful living example of that, that you realized in that moment, I can either live my mother's path and die young, and I don't want that,
mm-hmm.
or I can make some changes and change my outcomes, change my longevity, change how I feel each and every day, and not be dependent on 20 medications, which clearly didn't work because she died very young.
Exactly. And I think this realization and the work, the inner work that I did on myself, then set the tone to how I'm helping so many people,
Mhm.
to heal really deeply, and as well as like what a beautiful lesson to my children, to my son and to my daughter, that I was able with my lifestyle and the changes in the soul care to change the genetics, or maybe the destiny that I could receive from my mother and father. Also, both of them had a heart attack at an early age and unhealthy lifestyle, and I see now how it has a ripple effect, a positive ripple effect on my children as well, not only my clients.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because I have two young adult children as well. And, often our own children don't want to listen to us either, right? So I just lead by example. That's all I can do. And
Yes.
I remember several years ago, my oldest daughter told me, well, I'm just too healthy, she said, to me. And she's now not even living in the same country as me, and has a great career and doing her own thing. And when she was traveling at some point last year, she got quite sick, and she's on the road in different youth hostels, etc. And she called me up, saying, I'm sick, what can I do? And I started listing off all my regular go-tos. She'd already done all of them, and I said, then you're set. Your body will heal. You're doing everything that you can do.
Yes.
And I was just so happy that, even though a couple years ago she's like, you're too healthy, and she wants nothing to do with what I'm doing, because to her it looked like hard work, which it really isn't.
Right.
It's much harder work to be unhealthy. And when she truly needed it, she knew exactly what to do and was able to do that for herself. So
Yeah.
it is wonderful to see that ripple effect.
Exactly.
And that's why I have this podcast. And that's why I bring people like you on the show, because I love to share stories like yours of resilience, of being able to heal, of learning, and of hope, so that others who are, struggling right now can listen to your story and realize that they can get on a path to healing. They can tune into their internal guidance system.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that as long as we have hope, we can always heal.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say we can be sick and be depressed, or we can be sick and have hope. And
Yes.
our emotional state will make it better or will make it worse. It's so important.
Yes, absolutely. It comes back to my favorite quote that my listeners have heard me say over and over and over again. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So if you think you can't heal, you won't. If you think you can, you
You will.
will. And that think you can is that place of hope. And that's what's so powerful. So I know we've talked about, different healing and your wake up calls and the results from all of that. What about if we're proactive, moving into that proactive place? I know you like to talk about how listening to your internal guidance system can help prevent health crises. So let's just talk about that a little bit for people who aren't in a crisis right now. How can they prevent it for themselves?
First of all, I think that everything you shared in your episode, in your podcast, that's first of all the roadmap on how to prevent a wake-up call, because this is like being proactive and taking care of our health, our sleep, everything, our gut. So what you present in your talks, that's a very good foundation for preventing, as well as the unconscious mind and the limiting beliefs, just to prevent a wake-up call. I think for me, what I've seen with many people that I took them through the journey into their souls is that the wisdom that comes from within is usually, most of the times, unexpected, sometimes surprising, not insight that we could get from our mind, from our intellect. So what I've seen is that when we journey into the soul and listen to this internal guidance system, we get the clarity on the next steps or some actions we can take proactively to improve our well-being, and like you say, physical, emotional, on all levels, mental, spiritual, improve our well-being. So hopefully we can prevent the next wake-up call because we're proactively doing it now. I think for me, what's important is to acknowledge that our soul has the potential to be a perfect guide.
Mm.
And once we connect to our soul and we understand what she wants to learn through us, and we find the lesson, we learn the lesson, that's how we heal deeply. So yeah, the journey inside and receiving the guidance from the soul can give each person their specific and unique a path
Mm-hmm.
for healing, hopefully without having a wake-up call. And if we already had a wake-up call, then the same wisdom that lives in our soul can guide us how to turn this wake-up call into an opportunity and grow from it.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I always love to say that our soul, our inner guidance, will never lead us astray. It's always working for our best outcomes. And so learning
Always.
to tune into it is going to give us the right path forward.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, and I it's interesting you say that. I'll just say something quickly. I don't know if we have more time or not, but recently I had a personal experience with myself. Of I have some issues with my arm, and I resisted a surgery for 3 years, and I got to a point when I had to find a different solution because the pain got really worse. So anyway, I turned into my soul, did a deep journey inside more than twice, and I hated the answer that I received. I didn't want to accept it because my plan was to receive clarity on what else I can do holistically to heal the pain. And the answer I received was, you had tears in your bicep, you need to go through the surgery, release the resistance to the surgery. And I was like, no, I will find holistic ways. And then the next day I take a journey inside again, and it's a clear message again. And like you said, the soul or the guidance we receive from within is not misleading us, and I realized I have to listen to the guidance. There are physical things going on in the body that they need to be fixed while we're doing everything else. And it was definitely not something I wanted to do, but I decided to follow my soul guidance.
And again, it shows that there's more than one way to healing, and there is a need for Western medicine.
Yeah,
And when we bring the holistic and the Western together, that provides beautiful resources for us. It's not that one is bad and one is good. It's understanding when you need each of them.
exactly.
So yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. And thank you so, so much for coming on the show here and sharing this. I know you and I could talk for hours. I've loved this conversation. And I know that you have talked about two of your wake up calls here. Thank you for sharing that. I love to ask my guests though, what does it mean? What does don't wait for your wake up call mean to you?
I think it's exactly what we said now, but be proactive, take a look at your life and accept responsibility to live your life the way you want to, guided by your soul. So if we could all remember that our soul has the potential to be the perfect guide, and we have a pool of wisdom inside us, and if we can just rely on this wisdom inside us, not only external information, then we can either heal from a wake up call, or we can prevent the next one.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And if people would like to get hold of you, Michal, and work with you, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, so one of the best ways is to take the journey into the soul with me. That's my signature experience that I take people through. And they can find the information on my website, beaconsofchange.com. And for those who are interested in going through a personal transformation through the Soulful Healer method that I developed and used for years, then my book, Becoming Soulful, is going to be released in August 2024. So if you're listening to this episode before August 2024, just know that my book will be released. And if it's after August 2024, then it's already released and available on Amazon. And it's called Becoming Soulful, 6 Keys for Profound Transformation. So on my website, beaconsofchange.com/book, you can always find the most updated information about my book and my Soulful Healer programs.
Thank you very much. That's lots of information, and I will make sure all of that is in the show notes so the audience can easily access it. And just as we finish up this episode, Michal, is there any last wisdom you would like to share with the audience?
I actually really want to thank you, really, because I've been giving interviews to many podcasts, and people ask me all the time, and when I listen to your episodes, then really there is so much proactive wisdom that you share with people, that it just feels like I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much, Michal. It is my pleasure. And it's part of my mission that I realized when I got out of corporate world. I realized my health is my greatest asset, and I didn't know how to take care of it. And I started learning, and I just wanted to share that with others who are living their busy lives. And we're not taught this. We're not taught any of what we've talked about here today at school or through our public health care system. And so this is my way of bringing it to the public so that they can look after their health, all aspects of their health, in a proactive way by making small changes and introducing them to the many great healers that are available to us so that people can truly live their best lives. So thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And to my audience, thank you for making your health a priority, all of your health, and tuning in here each and every week and learning from all of the guests that I have on the show. And we will be back here again at the same place next week. Thank you for joining us on the Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call podcast.